The sound of hooves crunching on dried prairie grass masked the terrified breathing of the girl hidden beneath the canvas tarp in Vincent Wade's wagon. And when he finally discovered her 20 miles outside Red Bluff, California, with a bruised face and torn dress, he knew his solitary life was about to change forever. Vincent had been riding alone for 3 days straight, hauling supplies from Sacramento back to his small ranch near Red Bluff. It was late August in 1878, and the heat bore down mercilessly on the dusty trail. He was a man of 32 years, weathered by sun and hardship, with dark hair that needed cutting and eyes the color of slate. Most folks in Red Bluff knew him as the quiet rancher who kept to himself after his father died 2 years prior, leaving him the modest spread of land and a handful of cattle. Vincent preferred the company of horses to people, finding them more honest and considerably less complicated. He had stopped to water his 2 horses at a creek when he heard it, a soft rustling from the wagon bed, too deliberate to be the wind shifting the canvas. Vincent's hand moved instinctively to the revolver at his hip as he approached slowly. He had loaded the wagon himself back in Sacramento, knew exactly what should and should not be there. "Come out," he called, his voice firm but not unkind. "I know someone is in there." Silence answered him, but he could sense the presence, the held breath of a living creature trying to remain perfectly still. "I am not going to hurt you," Vincent said, softening his tone, "but I will not have stowaways without knowing who they are. Come out now, or I will pull that tarp back myself." A long moment passed before the canvas shifted. A hand emerged, small and feminine, followed by a face that made Vincent's breath catch. She was young, probably no more than 22 or 23, with auburn hair tangled around her shoulders and eyes the color of honey. But it was the fear in those eyes that struck him most, raw and primal, like a cornered animal expecting another blow. She climbed out awkwardly, her movements stiff with pain. Her dress, once a decent calico pattern in blue and white, was torn at the shoulder and stained with dirt. A purple bruise colored her left cheekbone, and her lower lip was split. "Please," she whispered, and her voice cracked on that single word. "Please do not send me back." Vincent lowered his hand from his weapon, studying her with concern rather than anger. "Back where?" Her eyes darted past him, scanning the empty horizon as if expecting pursuers to materialize from the heat shimmer. "To town, to him." "Who hurt you?" She flinched at the directness of his question, wrapping her arms around herself despite the oppressive heat. "I cannot go back. I would rather die out here." Vincent had seen his share of violence in his years, had witnessed what men could do when they believed they owned something or someone. The evidence of brutality written on this girl's face stirred something protective in his chest, a feeling he had not experienced in a very long time. "What is your name?" he asked gently. She hesitated, clearly debating whether to trust him with even that small piece of information. "Olivia," she finally said. "Olivia Harper." "Well, Miss Harper, I am Vincent Wade. This is my wagon you have been hiding in, and we are about 20 miles from Red Bluff, which is where I am headed, but I am guessing that is a problem for you." Olivia's face went pale. "Red Bluff?" "No, I thought this wagon was going north, further away." "It was in Sacramento yesterday," Vincent said. "If you climbed in there, you were heading back toward Red Bluff the whole time." The devastation that crossed her features was painful to witness. Her legs seemed to give out, and she sank to the ground beside the wagon wheel, her face dropping into her hands. Vincent saw her shoulders shake with silent sobs, and he felt acutely uncomfortable. Crying women were far outside his realm of expertise. He knelt down a few feet from her, keeping his distance so as not to frighten her further. "Who is looking for you, Miss Harper?" She lifted her face, and the tears streaming down her cheeks made the bruise stand out even more starkly. "Lawrence Kilpatrick. He owns the hotel in Red Bluff, and he decided he owned me too." Vincent knew the name. Kilpatrick was a prominent man in Red Bluff, wealthy and influential, with connections to the railroad and various business interests. He had never liked the man, found him arrogant and entitled, but this was something else entirely. "You worked for him?" Vincent asked. "My father owed him money," Olivia said, her voice barely above a whisper. "When my father died 3 months ago, Kilpatrick said the debt transferred to me. He said I could work it off at the hotel, but working was not all he expected. When I refused him, he locked me in a room, said I would come around eventually or I would starve. I managed to escape 2 nights ago through the window. I have been hiding and moving ever since, and I thought that Wagon was heading away from here." Vincent felt anger kindle in his gut, hot and righteous. A man who would treat a woman that way deserves worse than words can say. Olivia looked at him with those haunted honey eyes. "He will be looking for me. He told me that if I ever tried to leave, he would find me and make me regret being born. I believe him, Mr. Wade. I have seen what he does to people who cross him." Vincent stood, his mind already working through the options. He could take her back to Red Bluff and help her make a complaint with the sheriff, but he knew how that would likely go. Kilpatrick had money and influence, and Olivia was a young woman without resources or family. The law tended to favor men like Kilpatrick. "How far were you trying to get?" he asked. "As far as possible. Oregon, maybe. Somewhere he could not reach me." Vincent looked at his wagon, loaded with supplies he needed for the ranch. He looked at the girl sitting in the dirt, bruised and terrified. He thought about his quiet life, the solitude he had carefully cultivated, and the complications this situation would bring. Then he looked at her face again and knew he could not simply leave her to her fate. "I have a proposition," he said. "My ranch is about 10 miles past Red Bluff on the far side of town. It is isolated. No one comes out there unless I invite them. You could stay there while we figure out your next move. Get you healed up, fed properly, and then help you get wherever you need to go." Olivia stared at him as if he had offered her the moon. "Why would you do that? You do not know me." "No," Vincent agreed. "But I know men like Kilpatrick, and I know that what was done to you was wrong. I may keep to myself, Miss Harper, but I am not the kind of man who leaves someone in trouble when I can help." She stood slowly, wincing as her body protested the movement. "If he finds out you helped me, he will come after you too." "Let him try," Vincent said, and there was steel in his voice. "I am not afraid of Lawrence Kilpatrick." The journey to the ranch took the rest of that day and part of the next. Vincent avoided the main road through Red Bluff, taking a longer route that skirted the town entirely. It added hours to their trip, but he did not want to risk anyone spotting Olivia in his wagon. He gave her his bedroll to make a more comfortable spot among the supplies, and she settled in with visible relief, exhausted from days of running and hiding. They spoke little during the travel. Vincent was not much for conversation anyway, and Olivia seemed content to rest, though he noticed she startled at every unexpected sound. When they stopped for the night, he built a small fire and prepared a simple meal of beans and hardtack, watching as she ate with the desperate hunger of someone who had not had a proper meal in days. "When did you last eat?" he asked. "I stole some bread from a farmhouse yesterday morning," she admitted. "Before that, I am not sure. Time has been strange." Vincent gave her his portion without comment, and though she protested, he insisted. As darkness fell and the stars emerged in brilliant profusion across the sky, they sat on opposite sides of the fire, strangers bound by circumstance. "Tell me about your ranch," Olivia said quietly, breaking the long silence. Vincent poked at the fire with a stick. Not much to tell. It belonged to my father and his father before that. About 200 acres, more or less. I run some cattle, grow what vegetables I can, trade in town when I need supplies. It is a simple life. It sounds peaceful. It is lonely, Vincent said, surprising himself with the honesty. But peaceful, yes. Olivia pulled the blanket he had given her tighter around her shoulders, though the night was still warm. I grew up in Red Bluff. My mother died when I was young, and it was just my father and me. He was a good man, but he made some bad choices, got in over his head with debt. I tried to keep our house when he died, but Kilpatrick owned the note on that too. He took everything. You have no other family? Vincent asked. No one. My mother was from back east, and my father's family all passed on years ago. I was completely alone when Kilpatrick made his demands. She paused, staring into the flames. I thought about just accepting it, thought maybe it would be easier to just give him what he wanted, but I could not. I could not let him have that from me. You should not have to, Vincent said firmly. No woman should have to make that choice. They lapsed into silence again, but it felt less awkward now, more companionable. Vincent watched Olivia's eyes grow heavy, saw her fighting sleep even as exhaustion pulled at her. Rest, he told her. You are safe here, I will keep watch. You need to sleep too, she protested weakly. I will. But you first. Go on now. She lay down near the fire, curled on her side with the blanket wrapped around her. Within minutes, her breathing deepened and evened out. Vincent sat watching the darkness beyond their small circle of firelight, his rifle across his knees, thinking about the strange turn his life had taken. He had been alone for so long that he had convinced himself he preferred it that way. After his father died, the few friends he had drifted away, and he had let them go without protest. But sitting here now, with another human being nearby, he realized how much he had missed simple company. Not the superficial interactions of trading goods in town, but real presence, someone to share the silence with. Olivia Harper was trouble, no question about that. Helping her could bring Kilpatrick's wrath down on his head, could complicate his simple life in ways he could not yet foresee. But when he looked at her sleeping face, still bearing the marks of violence, he knew he had made the right choice. Morning came with the harsh cry of jays in the surrounding scrub oaks. Vincent had dozed fitfully, waking at every sound, but nothing had disturbed their camp. Olivia woke slowly, disoriented at first, then remembering where she was. She sat up, pushing her tangled hair from her face. Morning, Vincent said, handing her a tin cup of coffee he had just brewed. We have a few more hours to the ranch. There is a creek not far from here if you want to wash up first. She accepted the coffee gratefully, warming her hands on the cup. Thank you for all of this. I know I have said it, but I mean it. No thanks needed, Vincent replied, uncomfortable with gratitude. Ready to move on. They reached the ranch by mid-morning. It was modest, as Vincent had said, but well maintained. The house was a simple wooden structure with a covered porch, weathered but solid. A barn stood nearby, and beyond it, Vincent's small herd of cattle grazed in a fenced pasture. The land rolled gently, dotted with oaks and tall grass that had turned golden in the late summer heat. Olivia climbed down from the wagon, looking around with something approaching wonder. It is beautiful. Vincent, who had stopped seeing the beauty of his home years ago, tried to view it through her eyes. It will do, he said. Come on, I will show you inside. The house was sparsely furnished but clean. The main room served as kitchen and living space, with a stone fireplace taking up most of one wall. 2 doors led to separate bedrooms, and there was a small washroom that Vincent had added a few years back, complete with a pump that drew water from a well. You can take my father's old room, Vincent said, opening one of the doors to reveal a bedroom with a simple bed, dresser, and window overlooking the eastern pasture. I have not used it since he passed. You will have privacy here. Olivia walked into the room, running her hand over the quilt on the bed. This is more than I could have hoped for, she said softly. How long do you think I should stay? Vincent leaned against the door frame, considering. At least until you are healed and have had time to figure out a solid plan. Kilpatrick will be watching the roads and the stage stops. Rushing off too soon would be foolish. Give it a few weeks, maybe a month. Let things calm down. A month? Olivia turned to look at him. I cannot impose on you for that long. It is not an imposition. Besides, I could use the help around here. The vegetable garden has been getting away from me, and there are always chores that need doing. You can earn your keep, if that makes you feel better about it. She smiled, and it transformed her face despite the bruising. I was never afraid of hard work, Mr. Wade. Vincent, he corrected. If you are going to be staying here, we can dispense with formalities. Vincent, then, and you should call me Olivia. Over the following days, they fell into an unexpected rhythm. Vincent showed Olivia around the ranch, explaining the daily routines and responsibilities. She proved to be a quick learner and harder worker than he had expected. She tended the garden, pulling weeds and harvesting vegetables with careful attention. She helped with the chickens, gathering eggs and mending a section of their coop that had come loose. She cooked meals that were far better than Vincent's usual fare, and the house began to feel lived in again in a way it had not since his father's death. For his part, Vincent found himself aware of Olivia in ways that made him uncomfortable. He noticed how the morning light caught the red in her hair when she stood on the porch. He noticed the way she hummed while working in the garden, old songs he half remembered from his childhood. He noticed how her smile came more easily as the days passed, and she began to feel safe. The bruise on her face faded from purple to yellow-green, and the split in her lip healed. She ate regular meals and slept through the nights, and color returned to her cheeks. But there were still moments when Vincent would come upon her unexpectedly and see the fear flash through her eyes before recognition set in. And he knew that the wounds Kilpatrick had inflicted went deeper than the visible ones. 2 weeks after Olivia's arrival, Vincent had to make a supply run into Red Bluff. He had been putting it off, but they needed flour, sugar, and a few other staples he could not produce on the ranch. He told Olivia he would be gone most of the day, and he saw the anxiety cross her face. "What if someone asks about me?" she said. "What if Kilpatrick has connected me to you somehow?" "No one knows you are here," Vincent assured her, "and I will be careful. I will ask around, see what the talk is. Better to know what we are dealing with." "Be safe," she said, and the concern in her voice stirred something warm in his chest. Red Bluff was bustling when Vincent arrived. The town had grown considerably in recent years, the railroad bringing commerce and people through at a steady rate. He tied his horse outside the general store and went in, greeting the proprietor, a gray-haired man named Thomas Fletcher. "Vincent Wade," Thomas said with a broad smile. "Been a while since you came to town. How are things out at the ranch?" "Same as always," Vincent replied, keeping his tone casual. "Need to stock up on a few things." As Thomas gathered the supplies, Vincent listened to the conversations happening around the store. 2 women were discussing an upcoming church social. A man near the counter complained about the price of beef, but then Vincent heard the name he was waiting for. "Heard Kilpatrick is offering a reward," a young cowhand said to his companion. $50 for information about that girl who ran off from his hotel. $50. The other man whistled low. "Must want her back pretty bad. He is claiming she stole from him. Says she took money from the hotel safe before she disappeared. Vincent's hands tightened on the sack of flour he was holding, so Kilpatrick was spinning a story, making Olivia out to be a thief. It was a clever move. People would be watching for her now, not just because Kilpatrick wanted her back, but because there was money in it and the supposed righteousness of catching a criminal. "You hear anything about it, Wade?" Thomas asked, and Vincent turned to find the storekeeper watching him. "First I have heard of it," Vincent said truthfully. "When did this happen?" "About 2 weeks ago, maybe a bit more. She was working at the hotel, young woman named Olivia Harper. You know her." "Name does not ring a bell," Vincent said, which was also true. He had not known her name before she told him. "What makes Kilpatrick think she stole from him?" Thomas shrugged. "He says money was missing the morning she left. Sheriff is looking into it, but you know how these things go. Girl has probably run off to Sacramento or San Francisco by now." Vincent paid for his supplies and loaded them onto his horse. As he prepared to leave, he noticed a poster tacked to the wall outside the general store. It bore a rough sketch of a young woman with the words "Wanted for Theft" printed above it, and a description of Olivia below, along with the offer of $50 for information leading to her capture. The sketch was not particularly accurate, which was a small mercy, but anyone who knew Olivia would recognize her from it. Vincent tore the poster down and stuffed it into his saddlebag before mounting his horse and heading out of town. When he returned to the ranch, Olivia was waiting on the porch, pacing anxiously. She hurried to meet him as he dismounted. "What did you find out?" she asked immediately. Vincent pulled the poster from his saddlebag and handed it to her. He watched the color drain from her face as she read it. "He is calling me a thief," she whispered, "saying I stole from him." "It is a lie designed to make people look for you," Vincent said, "but it complicates things. There is a reward out now, $50. That is enough money to make people pay attention." Olivia crumpled the poster in her fist. "I never took anything from him. I ran with nothing but the clothes on my back." "I know that," Vincent said gently, "but people in town do not. Kilpatrick has them believing his story." She looked up at him, and he saw tears threatening in her eyes. "Maybe I should just leave." "Go tonight. Head north on foot. If I stay here, I am putting you at risk." "You are not going anywhere," Vincent said firmly. "Not until we have a proper plan, and not until you are truly ready. Running off half-prepared is how people get caught or hurt. You will stay here where you are safe." "But Vincent, no," he interrupted, his voice brooking no argument. "This is my land, my decision. You are staying." She stared at him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Thank you," she said again. And this time when she said it, there was something more in her voice, something deeper than simple gratitude. That night, as they ate dinner together at the small kitchen table, the atmosphere felt different. The danger was more real now, the stakes clearer, and it created an intimacy between them that had not existed before. Vincent found himself telling Olivia about his father, about growing up on this ranch, about the dreams he had once had of expanding the operation. Olivia, in turn, spoke more about her own childhood, about her mother who had been a schoolteacher and had taught Olivia to read and write and appreciate learning. She talked about her father, who had been a carpenter, skilled with his hands but poor with money. She described the house she had grown up in, small but filled with love, until her mother's death had cast a shadow over everything. "I think my father never recovered from losing her," Olivia said quietly. "He tried for my sake, but part of him died with her. That is why he was vulnerable to men like Kilpatrick. He was not thinking clearly anymore, just trying to get through each day." "Grief can do that to a person," Vincent said. "After my father died, I felt lost for a long time. This ranch had been his dream more than mine. I considered selling it, moving on. "What stopped you?" Vincent considered the question. "I suppose I realized that leaving would not solve anything. You carry your grief with you wherever you go. I figured I might as well stay somewhere that held good memories too, not just sad ones." Olivia reached across the table and placed her hand over his. It was a simple gesture, but it sent a jolt through Vincent. Her hand was warm and small, her touch gentle. "I am glad you stayed," she said softly. "Otherwise, you would not have been on that road to find me." Vincent looked at their joined hands, then up at her face. In the lamplight, her eyes were the color of amber, and there was something in her expression that made his breath catch. He realized with a start that he was falling for her. This woman who had appeared in his wagon like a gift and a curse combined, who had disrupted his solitary life, who made him remember what it felt like to care about someone. The realization should have frightened him, but instead, it settled over him like something inevitable, something right. Olivia withdrew her hand, a slight flush coloring her cheeks. "I should clean up," she said, rising from the table. "Let me help," Vincent said, standing as well. They worked side by side at the washbasin, their shoulders occasionally brushing, both acutely aware of the other's presence. The small house suddenly felt smaller, the air charged with something unspoken. When the dishes were done, Olivia turned to him. "Vincent, I want you to know that these past weeks have been the safest I have felt in a very long time. You have given me more than shelter. You have given me peace." "Olivia," he began, then stopped, not sure how to articulate what he was feeling. She waited, looking up at him with those honey eyes, and Vincent made a decision. He reached out and gently tucked a strand of her auburn hair behind her ear, letting his hand linger against her cheek. "I am glad you are here," he said simply. She leaned into his touch, her eyes closing briefly. "So am I." They stood that way for a long moment, the distance between them feeling both immense and paper-thin. Then Olivia stepped back, breaking the spell. "Good night, Vincent," she said softly. "Good night, Olivia." The summer days continued to pass, bleeding into early autumn. The heat remained, but the quality of light changed, becoming softer, more golden. Vincent and Olivia worked the ranch together, their partnership becoming more natural with each passing day. She proved adept at handling the chickens and even learned to milk the one cow Vincent kept. He taught her to ride properly, starting her on his gentler horse, and found himself enjoying being a teacher. One afternoon, as they rode the fence line checking for breaks, Olivia pulled her horse up beside his and smiled. "I never imagined I could feel this content," she said. "Everything in my life before seems like it belonged to someone else." Vincent understood what she meant. His own life had been transformed by her presence. The house no longer felt empty. Meals were no longer a solitary, mechanical affair. He found himself looking forward to evenings spent on the porch, talking about everything and nothing, listening to the night sounds with Olivia beside him. But beneath the contentment ran an undercurrent of awareness that this could not last forever. Olivia was still a wanted woman. Kilpatrick still searched for her, and their little sanctuary existed on borrowed time. Vincent tried not to think about it, tried to live in each moment, but the knowledge sat in the back of his mind like a storm cloud on the horizon. It was on a particularly warm afternoon in mid-September that trouble finally found them. Vincent was in the barn, mucking out stalls, when he heard horses approaching. Multiple horses. He immediately set down his pitchfork and moved to the barn door, his hand instinctively finding the revolver at his hip. Olivia was in the garden, and she had heard the horses too. She looked toward the barn, her face pale with sudden fear, and Vincent motioned for her to stay where she was. He stepped out into the yard as 3 riders came into view. The man in the lead was Lawrence Kilpatrick, and Vincent recognized him immediately despite having seen him only a handful of times over the years. He was a man in his late 40s, well-dressed in city clothes that looked out of place on horseback, with dark hair graying at the temples and cold eyes. The two men flanking him were clearly hired muscle, rough-looking characters with guns prominent on their hips. "Vincent Wade," Kilpatrick said, reining in his horse. His voice was smooth, cultured, and utterly without warmth. "I have been meaning to pay you a visit." "What can I do for you, Kilpatrick?" Vincent asked, keeping his tone neutral. Kilpatrick's gaze moved past Vincent to where Olivia stood frozen among the vegetables. A smile crossed his face, thin and triumphant. "Well, what do we have here?" he said. "Olivia Harper. I have been looking everywhere for you, my dear." Olivia said nothing, but Vincent could see her trembling from where he stood. "She is my guest," Vincent said firmly, "and she is staying here of her own free will." Kilpatrick dismounted, handing his reins to one of his men. "I am afraid that is not possible. You see, Miss Harper is wanted for theft. There is a warrant out for her arrest. As a law-abiding citizen, I have come to collect her and return her to town to face justice." "There is no warrant," Vincent said. "You made up the theft charge to force her back." Kilpatrick's expression did not change. "That is a serious accusation, Wade. Do you have proof of these claims?" "I have her word, and I believe her." "The word of a thief," Kilpatrick laughed. "I am afraid that will not hold much weight. Now, Olivia, come along. You have caused enough trouble." "She is not going anywhere with you," Vincent said, and his hand rested on his revolver. The two hired men tensed, their hands moving toward their own weapons. Kilpatrick held up a hand, stopping them. "Let us not be hasty," Kilpatrick said. "Wade, I understand you are trying to be chivalrous. Perhaps you have even developed feelings for the girl, but you are making a mistake. She is my property by law, and I will have her back. The only question is whether you want to make this difficult or not." "Your property." Vincent's voice was low and dangerous. "She is not property. She is a human being." "A human being who owes me a considerable debt," Kilpatrick countered. "A debt that will be paid one way or another. Now stand aside." Olivia found her voice. "I will not go back to you. I would rather die." Kilpatrick's face hardened. "That can be arranged." Vincent drew his revolver in one smooth motion, pointing it directly at Kilpatrick. "I said she is staying here. Now get off my land." The two hired men drew their weapons, creating a tense standoff. Kilpatrick looked at Vincent with something approaching respect. "You would really shoot me over her?" he asked. "Try me," Vincent replied. A long moment passed, tension thick in the air. Then Kilpatrick smiled, though it did not reach his eyes. "Very well," he said. "We will leave. But this is not over, Wade. You have made a powerful enemy today. I will return with the sheriff and a proper warrant, and when I do, you will have no legal ground to stand on. Harboring a fugitive is a crime." "Then I will answer for it," Vincent said. "But until you return with proper legal authority, she stays here." Kilpatrick mounted his horse, his two men following suit. "Enjoy your time together," he said. "It will not last long." They rode off, dust rising in their wake. Vincent did not lower his weapon until they were out of sight. Only then did he turn to Olivia, who had collapsed to her knees among the vegetables, shaking. He went to her immediately, kneeling beside her and pulling her into his arms. She clung to him, her face pressed against his chest. "He found me," she whispered. "He will take me back." "No," Vincent said fiercely. "He will not. I promise you, Olivia, I will not let that happen." She pulled back to look at him, tears streaming down her face. "You cannot fight the law, Vincent. If he comes back with the sheriff and a warrant, you will have to let me go. Otherwise, you could end up in jail yourself, or worse." Vincent cupped her face in his hands, wiping away her tears with his thumbs. "Then we will leave before he can come back. We will pack what we need and head north tonight. Oregon, like you originally planned. We will start over somewhere he cannot find us. We, Olivia repeated, her voice breaking on the word. You think I would let you go alone? Vincent asked. Olivia, these past weeks with you have been the best of my life. I was just existing before you came along, going through the motions. But you made me feel alive again. You made this place a home instead of just a house. I am not letting you go. But your ranch, your life here, means nothing without you, Vincent interrupted. I realized that the moment Kilpatrick rode up. The thought of losing you, of him taking you back to that hell, was unbearable. I love you, Olivia. I know it is fast. I know we have not known each other long, but I love you. And if I have to leave everything behind to keep you safe, then that is what I will do. Olivia stared at him, her honey eyes wide with wonder and something that looked like hope. You love me. I love you, he confirmed. Do you think you could come to love me too? Instead of answering with words, Olivia pulled him closer and kissed him. It was a kiss full of desperation and relief, fear and hope, all tangled together. Vincent wrapped his arms around her, holding her tight, pouring everything he felt into that kiss. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Olivia rested her forehead against his. I already love you, she whispered. I think I started falling for you the first night you gave me your food and stood watch while I slept. No one has ever protected me the way you have. No one has ever made me feel so valued. Vincent kissed her again, softer this time, savoring the moment. Then reality intruded and he pulled back. We need to go, he said. Kilpatrick will probably be back tomorrow with reinforcements. We have tonight to pack and get as far away as possible. They rose and hurried into the house. Vincent pulled out his father's old traveling trunk and began filling it with essentials. Clothes, food, ammunition, money he had saved over the years. Olivia gathered what few possessions she had, then helped him pack supplies. As night fell, they worked by lamplight, moving with urgent efficiency. Vincent went to the barn and prepared both horses, strapping on saddlebags and checking their shoes. He hated the thought of abandoning the ranch, the land that had been in his family for generations. But he would do it without hesitation if it meant keeping Olivia safe. They were nearly ready to leave when Vincent heard it, the sound of many horses approaching fast. His blood ran cold. Kilpatrick had not waited until morning. He had returned under cover of darkness and he had brought more men. Go out the back, Vincent said urgently to Olivia. Get to the horses, I will hold them off and meet you. I am not leaving without you, Olivia said firmly. Olivia, no, she interrupted. We stay together. Whatever happens, we face it together. Vincent wanted to argue, but there was no time. The riders were already in the yard. He grabbed his rifle and moved to the window, peering out. There were at least 8 men, all armed. Kilpatrick sat on his horse in the center, and beside him was a man wearing a sheriff's badge. Wade, the sheriff called out. This is Sheriff Tom Mason. I have a warrant for the arrest of Olivia Harper on charges of theft. Send her out, and there will be no trouble. Vincent's mind raced. He knew Tom Mason, had dealt with him on occasion in town. He was not a bad man, but he was by the book, and he would enforce a warrant whether he believed in it or not. The charges are false, Vincent called back. Kilpatrick is lying to get her back. That is for a judge to decide, Mason replied. Right now, I have a legal warrant. She needs to come with me. Vincent looked at Olivia, saw the resignation beginning to creep into her expression. She was getting ready to surrender, to turn herself in to protect him. He could not let that happen. Vincent, she said softly, maybe this is the only way. Maybe if I go back and face the charges, I can prove my innocence. You know that will not happen, Vincent said. Kilpatrick has money and influence. He will make sure you are found guilty, and then he will have complete control over you. I will not let that happen." "Then what do we do?" Vincent made a decision. He set down his rifle and took Olivia's hand. "We trust," he said. Before she could ask what he meant, Vincent opened the door and stepped out onto the porch, Olivia beside him. The men in the yard shifted, hands moving toward weapons, but Vincent held up his free hand in a gesture of peace. "Sheriff Mason," he called out, "I am asking you for 1 hour. Give me 1 hour to ride into town with you and make my case before you take Olivia in. If you are not satisfied after that, we will both come peacefully." Mason looked at Kilpatrick, who was shaking his head. "I do not see why that is necessary," Kilpatrick said. "The warrant is clear." 1 hour is not much to ask," Mason said, surprising everyone. He looked at Vincent. "You have always been a straight shooter, Wade. I will give you this. But if you run, I will hunt you down." "Understood." "Understood," Vincent agreed. "Thank you, Sheriff." Kilpatrick looked furious, but he could not countermand the sheriff without revealing too much of his hand. The group mounted up, and Vincent and Olivia joined them, riding between the armed men like prisoners already convicted. The ride to Red Bluff took less than an hour. The town was mostly dark, only a few lights still burning in the saloons and the hotel. Mason led them to his office, a small building near the center of town. Inside, he lit a lamp and gestured for Vincent and Olivia to sit. "You have 1 hour," he said. "Use it well." Vincent looked at Kilpatrick, who had followed them inside along with 2 of his men. "The charges are fabricated," Vincent began. "Olivia never stole anything. Kilpatrick has been keeping her prisoner, forcing her into situations she did not consent to. When she escaped, he invented the theft to cover his own crimes." Kilpatrick laughed. "What an imaginative story." "Do you have any proof of these wild accusations, Wade?" "I have my testimony," Olivia said, speaking for the first time. "I will tell anyone who listens what you did to me, what you tried to force me to do." "The word of a proven thief," Kilpatrick said dismissively. "No one will believe you, my dear. You are already a criminal." "Then let me see the evidence of the theft," Vincent said. "Show us the proof that she took anything." Mason looked at Kilpatrick. "That is a fair request. What evidence do you have?" Kilpatrick's confidence flickered for just a moment. "My word should be sufficient. I run a legitimate business and I know my own accounts. Money was missing after she left." "But can you prove she took it?" Mason pressed. "Any witnesses? Any evidence?" "I do not need to prove anything," Kilpatrick snapped. "I filed a complaint and you issued a warrant. That is how the law works." "Actually," a new voice said from the doorway, "that is not quite how it works." Everyone turned. An older woman stood in the entrance, gray-haired and stern-faced, wearing a traveling dress and carrying a worn carpetbag. She looked at Olivia and her expression softened. "Aunt Margaret," Olivia gasped. "But you were back east. You thought I was still in Boston," Margaret finished. She stepped into the office, her gaze sweeping over the assembled men before settling on Kilpatrick with obvious distaste. "I was. But I received a letter from a friend here in Red Bluff telling me what happened to my niece after her father died. I came as quickly as I could." "You are Olivia's aunt?" Mason asked. "I am indeed. Margaret Ashford, formerly Margaret Harper. Her father was my brother. I have been traveling for nearly 2 weeks to get here, and I arrived to find my niece accused of theft. Ridiculous." "With respect, madam," Kilpatrick said, though his tone held no respect whatsoever, "this does not concern you." "It concerns me very much," Margaret retorted. "Olivia, come here, child." Olivia went to her aunt, and the older woman embraced her fiercely. "I am so sorry I was not here when you needed me," Margaret said, "but I am here now." She turned back to the room, still holding Olivia. Now, Sheriff, I want to understand these charges. Mr. Kilpatrick claims my niece stole from him. What exactly did she supposedly steal, and where is the evidence? Mason looked increasingly uncomfortable. Mr. Kilpatrick filed a complaint saying that money was taken from his hotel safe. He estimates the amount at approximately $100. And was there an investigation? Margaret asked. Did anyone examine this safe? Question the hotel staff. Check to see if the money was simply miscounted or spent elsewhere. Well, no, Mason admitted. Kilpatrick is a respected businessman. His word has always been good. His word, Margaret said coldly, is that of a man who was attempting to force my niece into his bed by holding a fraudulent debt over her head. I have already been to see the courthouse, Sheriff. I looked up the supposed debt my brother owed. Do you know what I found? Kilpatrick had gone very still. The original debt was for $50, Margaret continued. $50 that my brother borrowed to cover medical expenses. According to the paperwork, which I examined very carefully, the debt was to be repaid at 5% interest over 2 years. By my calculations, even with interest, the debt should have been fully paid off before my brother died. He had been making regular payments. That is not possible, Kilpatrick said, but his voice lacked conviction. It is not only possible, it is documented, Margaret said. Unless you would like to accuse the courthouse clerk of falsifying records. The payments are all recorded, properly receipted. My brother may have had his faults, but he paid his debts. You, Mr. Kilpatrick, inflated a paid debt to trap a vulnerable young woman. That is fraud and that is coercion. Mason was looking at Kilpatrick now with new eyes. Is this true? Did you inflate the debt? I miscalculated, Kilpatrick said, but he was backpedaling now. The records must have been incomplete when I reviewed them. And the theft charge? Vincent asked. What about that? Margaret smiled grimly. I took the liberty of speaking to some of the staff at Mr. Kilpatrick's hotel before coming here. A maid named Susan was very forthcoming once I assured her she would be protected. She stated that Mr. Kilpatrick removed money from his own safe the morning Olivia disappeared and claimed it had been stolen. She saw him do it. That is a lie, Kilpatrick said, his face reddening. Susan would never. Susan is prepared to testify, Margaret interrupted. As are 2 other members of your staff who witnessed your treatment of my niece. They saw you lock her in that room. They heard her crying. They were too frightened to speak up before, but they will speak now. I have made sure of that. The office fell silent. Kilpatrick looked like a man watching his entire world collapse. Mason stared at him with disgust. It seems we have a problem, Mr. Kilpatrick, the sheriff said slowly. If what Mrs. Ashford says is true, then you have filed a false report, which is a crime. And if her other claims hold up, you could be facing much more serious charges. This is absurd, Kilpatrick blustered. You are going to take the word of a strange woman and some frightened staff members over mine. I am going to investigate properly like I should have from the beginning, Mason said. And until that investigation is complete, Miss Harper is free to go. There is not enough evidence to hold her. Kilpatrick's face twisted with rage. You will regret this, Mason, all of you. Are you threatening a law officer? Mason asked quietly. Kilpatrick seemed to realize he had gone too far. He clamped his mouth shut, turned on his heel, and stormed out of the office, his men following. The remaining people exhaled collectively. I apologize, Miss Harper, Mason said. I should have looked into this more carefully. I allowed Kilpatrick's reputation to cloud my judgment. Thank you, Sheriff, Olivia said softly. Mason nodded to Vincent. You are free to go as well, Wade, and I am sorry for the trouble. Vincent shook the sheriff's hand, then turned to Margaret. Thank you, he said simply. You saved her. Family looks after family, Margaret replied. even when we have been apart for too long." She looked at her niece. "Olivia, I want you to come back to Boston with me. I have a comfortable home there and you will be safe. You can start a new life, far from all of this." Olivia looked at Vincent and he saw the conflict in her eyes. She was being offered safety, security, a fresh start with family who cared about her. It was everything she needed, and it would take her far away from him. Vincent forced himself to smile. "You should go," he told her. "It is a good opportunity." "But what about—" Olivia began. "I will be fine," Vincent said, though the words felt like glass in his throat. "You will be safe and cared for. That is what matters." Margaret was watching them both with sharp eyes. "Is there something I am missing here?" she asked. "Mrs. Ashford," Vincent said. "Your niece and I have grown close during her time at my ranch. I care for her deeply. But I want what is best for her, and going with you is the smart choice. She will have family, a proper home, opportunities I could never give her." "I see," Margaret said thoughtfully. She turned to Olivia. "And what do you want, child?" Olivia looked at Vincent and her eyes were shining with tears. "I want to stay with him," she said. "Aunt Margaret, I am so grateful that you came, that you helped me, but I love Vincent. I want to build a life with him." Margaret studied them both for a long moment. Then she sighed. "Well, I cannot say I am not disappointed. I was looking forward to having you with me in Boston. But I recognize that look in your eyes, Olivia. It is the same look your mother had when she met your father. When a Harper woman loves, she loves completely." She turned to Vincent. "You, Mr. Wade, what are your intentions toward my niece?" Vincent did not hesitate. "I intend to marry her if she will have me. I intend to spend the rest of my life making her happy and keeping her safe. I do not have much, just a ranch and some cattle, but I will work every day to give her a good life." "Vincent," Olivia whispered, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. Margaret nodded approvingly. "Well then, that settles it. I will stay in Red Bluff for the wedding, then return to Boston. But Olivia, you must promise to write and to visit when you can." "I promise," Olivia said, hugging her aunt tightly. They left the sheriff's office together, stepping out into the cool night air. Vincent felt as if a massive weight had been lifted from his shoulders. Olivia was safe, free from Kilpatrick's threats, and she had chosen him. As they walked toward where the horses were tied, Olivia took his hand. "Did you mean it?" she asked. "About marrying me?" Vincent stopped and turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. "I meant every word. Olivia Harper, will you marry me?" She laughed through her tears. "Yes, Vincent Wade. Yes, I will marry you." He pulled her into his arms and kissed her, right there in the middle of Red Bluff's Main Street, not caring who might see. When they finally broke apart, both were smiling. "Can we go home now?" Olivia asked. "Back to the ranch?" "Absolutely," Vincent said. "Let us go home." The wedding took place a week later in Red Bluff's small church. It was a modest affair, attended by Margaret, Sheriff Mason, Thomas Fletcher from the general store, and a handful of other townspeople who had never had anything but respect for Vincent. Kilpatrick was notably absent, having quietly left town after the sheriff's investigation had indeed confirmed everything Margaret had claimed. Charges had been filed, but Kilpatrick had fled before he could be arrested. Rumors suggested he had gone to San Francisco, but no one seemed particularly interested in pursuing him. Olivia wore a simple dress that Margaret had purchased for her, white with delicate lace at the collar and cuffs. She had pinned wildflowers in her hair, and Vincent thought she was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. He wore his best clothes, a clean shirt and vest, his dark hair neatly combed for once. As he stood at the altar and watched Olivia walk down the aisle toward him, he felt his throat tighten with emotion. The ceremony was brief but meaningful. They exchanged vows, promising to love and honor each other for the rest of their days. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Vincent kissed his bride with such tenderness that Margaret dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief. Afterward, there was a small celebration at the church, with cake and punch. Margaret pulled Vincent aside at one point, her expression serious. "Take care of her," she said. "She has been through so much." "I will protect her with my life," Vincent promised. "I believe you will," Margaret said, then smiled. "And make her happy. That is just as important as keeping her safe. I will do my best at that too." Margaret left for Boston the following day, extracting promises from Olivia to write regularly and to consider visiting in a year or two. The parting was bittersweet, but Olivia was radiant with happiness as she waved goodbye to her aunt. Then she and Vincent returned to the ranch together as husband and wife. The first months of their marriage were a period of adjustment and discovery. They learned each other's habits, preferences, and rhythms. Olivia proved to be an excellent manager of the household, and she took genuine interest in the operation of the ranch. Vincent taught her more about cattle management and began including her in decisions about the property. But it was in the quiet moments that their love truly deepened. Evenings spent on the porch, watching the sun set over the rolling hills. Mornings waking up together, tangled in each other's arms. Working side by side in the garden or the barn, stealing kisses when the mood struck them. Vincent had never imagined himself as a husband. He had resigned himself to a solitary life, convinced that he was better off alone. But Olivia had changed everything. She brought light and warmth to every corner of his existence. She made him laugh, challenged him to be better, and loved him with a fierce devotion that still sometimes took his breath away. Winter came, and with it the first real test of their new life together. A harsh storm swept through in late December, bringing heavy snow and bitter cold. They spent days huddled inside, keeping the fire burning and rationing their supplies. But even in the midst of hardship, Vincent felt blessed. He had Olivia beside him, her presence making even the bleakest days bearable. When spring arrived, they celebrated their first anniversary with a quiet dinner, and a night spent dancing in the front room to music only they could hear. Olivia had bloomed over the past year, her face no longer bearing any trace of the fear and bruising Vincent had first seen. She was confident now, settled, truly happy. "I have something to tell you," she said as they swayed together in the lamplight. Vincent pulled back to look at her. "What is it?" She smiled, and there was something radiant in her expression. "I am with child. We are going to have a baby." Vincent felt joy explode through him. He lifted Olivia off her feet, spinning her around as she laughed. "A baby," he repeated. "We are going to be parents in the fall," she confirmed. "Are you happy?" "Happy does not begin to cover it," Vincent said, setting her down carefully as if she might break. "I am ecstatic, terrified but ecstatic." Olivia laughed. "Good, because I am terrified too, but we will figure it out together." They spent the next months preparing for the baby's arrival. Vincent built a cradle from oak wood, carving it with careful precision. Olivia sewed tiny clothes and blankets, her excitement growing with each passing week. They talked endlessly about names, about what kind of parents they wanted to be, about the future they were building. The baby arrived in October, a healthy boy with a strong set of lungs and his mother's honey-colored eyes. They named him Thomas, after Vincent's father, and Michael for Olivia's father. Thomas Michael Wade became the center of their world. Vincent discovered that fatherhood suited him. He loved holding his son, watching him sleep, seeing Olivia nurse him with such tender care. The ranch felt complete now, a real family home rather than just a place to live. As Thomas grew from infant to toddler, Vincent and Olivia continued to build their life together. They added more cattle to the herd, expanded the garden, and even built an addition to the house to accommodate their growing family. Olivia wrote regular letters to Aunt Margaret, who sent gifts and loving words in return, though age and distance prevented her from visiting. When Thomas was 3, Olivia gave birth to their second child, a daughter they named Caroline Rose. She had her father's dark hair and her mother's spirit, and from the moment she could walk, she followed her brother everywhere. Life on the ranch was not always easy. There were droughts and harsh winters, sick cattle and broken equipment, all the challenges that came with making a living from the land. But Vincent and Olivia faced each obstacle together, their love providing a foundation that never wavered. On their 10th anniversary, they sat on the porch watching Thomas and Caroline play in the yard. A third child, a son they had named Henry, slept in Olivia's arms. "You ever think about what your life would have been like if you had not climbed into my wagon that day?" Vincent asked. Olivia considered the question. "Sometimes," she admitted. "If I had chosen a different wagon, if you had not offered me shelter, if Aunt Margaret had not arrived when she did, so many things had to align just right for us to be here now." "Fate," Vincent said. "Maybe," Olivia agreed. "Or maybe just luck. But whatever it was, I am grateful for every moment. You saved my life, Vincent, not just from Kilpatrick, but from despair. You gave me hope when I had none." "You saved me too," Vincent said softly. "I was just going through the motions before you. You gave me a reason to really live again." She leaned against him, careful not to wake the baby. "We saved each other then." "Yes," Vincent agreed, wrapping his arm around her. "We did." Years continued to pass, marked by the changing seasons and the growth of their children. Thomas grew into a strong young man who loved the ranch as much as his father did. Caroline became a spirited girl with a gift for healing, often helping neighbors with various ailments. Henry proved to be the scholar of the family, always reading, always asking questions about the world beyond their small corner of California. Vincent and Olivia aged together, their love deepening with each passing year. Gray began to thread through their hair, and lines appeared on their faces, but to Vincent, Olivia was always the beautiful girl he had found hiding in his wagon. And to Olivia, Vincent was always the lonely cowboy who had chosen to protect her when he could have simply turned her away. They added more children to their family over the years. Another daughter named Margaret after Olivia's aunt, who had passed peacefully in her sleep back in Boston. A final son, born when Olivia was 39, who they named Jacob after no one in particular, simply because they liked the name. The ranch prospered. What had once been Vincent's modest operation grew into something substantial. Thomas took over more of the daily management as Vincent aged, but the older man never fully retired. He loved the work too much, loved the land too much, and loved spending his days beside Olivia too much to ever truly step away. On the evening of their 30th anniversary, Vincent and Olivia sat on the same porch where they had spent so many evenings before. Their children were grown now, most with families of their own. Thomas ran the ranch with his wife Martha at his side. Caroline had married a doctor and lived in town. Henry had become a teacher. Margaret had married a banker and moved to Sacramento. Jacob, at 22, was still deciding what he wanted to do with his life, but he had time. 30 years, Olivia said, shaking her head in wonder. "It seems like yesterday and a lifetime ago all at once." "You have any regrets?" Vincent asked. Olivia turned to look at him, and in the fading light he could still see the girl she had been. "Not a single one. You." "Only that I did not find you sooner," Vincent said, taking her hand. She smiled and kissed him, a kiss that held 3 decades of love, joy, struggle, and triumph. When they parted, she rested her head on his shoulder. "Thank you," she said softly. "For what? For finding me. for keeping me, for loving me, for giving me this beautiful life." Vincent tightened his hold on her. "Thank you for hiding in my wagon all those years ago. Best discovery I ever made." They sat together as night fell, watching stars emerge one by one across the vast California sky. Inside the house, they could hear Jacob moving around, preparing dinner. Beyond, in the small house Thomas had built nearby, they could hear their grandchildren laughing and playing. This was what Vincent had never known he wanted. Not just the ranch, not just the land, but this. Love, family, belonging. Olivia had brought him all of it, transformed his lonely existence into something rich and full. As an old man of 62 now, looking back on his life, Vincent knew with absolute certainty that every choice, every hardship, every moment had been worth it to end up here. With Olivia beside him, their children and grandchildren thriving, and a love that had not dimmed even slightly despite the passage of time. "I love you," he told her, as he had told her countless times before. "I love you too," she replied, as she always did. "Forever and always." They remained on the porch until full dark, two people who had found each other against all odds and built something beautiful from that chance encounter. A lonely cowboy and a frightened girl, transformed by love into so much more. As they finally rose to go inside, where warmth and family waited, Vincent took one last look at the land he loved. The ranch that had been his father's dream and had become his own. The home where he and Olivia had raised their family and would grow old together. And he knew, with the certainty that comes from a life well lived, that he would not change a single thing. Inside, Jacob had indeed prepared dinner, and they sat together at the long table that had seen so many meals, so many celebrations, so many quiet moments of connection. As they ate and talked, Vincent caught Olivia's eye across the table and smiled. She smiled back, that same smile that had captivated him 30 years ago, and Vincent felt his heart swell with gratitude. This, he thought. This was everything. The years that followed were gentle ones. Vincent and Olivia settled into the rhythm of elder years, content to spend their days in each other's company. They took walks around the property, hand in hand, reminiscing about the early days. They spoiled their grandchildren shamelessly, delighting in every visit. Thomas ran the ranch with skill and dedication, honoring the legacy his father had built while adding his own innovations. He consulted Vincent regularly, valuing his father's experience and wisdom, and Vincent took great pride in seeing his son thrive. On a warm spring evening when Vincent was 68 and Olivia 60, they sat on their porch as the sun painted the sky in shades of gold and rose. Olivia had been feeling tired lately, and Vincent worried, but she insisted she was fine, just slowing down with age. "Do you remember the first night we spent on this porch together?" Olivia asked. "After we came back from town after the wedding." "I remember," Vincent said. "You said it felt like home." "It did then, and it still does. This place, this life, it is all home to me." Vincent kissed her forehead. "And you are home to me." They sat in comfortable silence as darkness fell. Later, they would go inside to bed, where they would curl up together as they had for 3 decades. Tomorrow would bring new joys and challenges, as every day did. But tonight, in this moment, everything was perfect. Years passed, bringing both joy and sorrow. Olivia's health began to decline slowly, and Vincent cared for her with the same devotion he had shown throughout their marriage. Their children visited often, and the house was filled with love and laughter despite the shadow of mortality that comes to all. When Olivia passed away peacefully in her sleep, at the age of 67, Vincent held her hand and whispered all the things he had told her 1,000 times before. That he loved her, that she had been his salvation, that she had given him a life beyond his wildest dreams. The grief was immense, but so too was the gratitude. Vincent had been blessed with 43 years of love with an extraordinary woman. He had children and grandchildren who carried both their legacies forward. He had lived a full, rich life. Vincent continued on for several more years, aging but never losing his essential spirit. He spent his days helping Thomas with the ranch when he could, playing with his great-grandchildren when they visited, and sitting on the porch remembering the girl who had hidden in his wagon so long ago. On a cool autumn evening, when Vincent was 74, he felt tired in a way he recognized. He called Thomas to him and spoke plainly. "My time is coming soon," he said. "Do not be sad. I have lived a good life, better than I ever deserved. Your mother and I built something beautiful together, and you have carried it forward magnificently. I am proud of you, of all of you." Thomas, now a man in his late 40s with silver threading his hair, embraced his father. "Thank you for everything," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "For building this place, for loving us, for showing us what family means." "Thank you for being the son every father hopes for," Vincent replied. That night, Vincent lay in the bed he had shared with Olivia for so many years. He could almost feel her presence beside him, almost hear her voice. As he closed his eyes for the final time, his last thought was of that first moment he had pulled back the canvas tarp and seen her frightened face. "Thank you," he thought, whether to fate or God or the universe itself. "Thank you for putting her in my wagon. Thank you for every moment that followed." Vincent Wade passed peacefully in his sleep, joining his beloved Olivia wherever souls go when their earthly journey ends. He was buried beside her on a hill overlooking the ranch, under the shade of an old oak tree. The ranch continued, passed from Thomas to his children, and from them to theirs. The story of Vincent and Olivia became family legend, told and retold through the generations. The lonely cowboy who found a girl hiding in his wagon. The girl whose fear turned to love on the trail. The couple who built a life, a family, and a legacy that endured long after they were gone. And in the evenings, when the light slants golden across the California hills, some say you can still feel their presence on that old porch. Two souls who found each other against all odds and loved each other through every trial. A testament to the power of compassion, courage, and the enduring strength of true love. Their story had ended, but the love they had built lived on, woven into the very fabric of the land they had cherished and the family they had created. A lonely cowboy and a frightened girl had become something magnificent together, and their legacy was love itself, passed down through the generations, eternal and unbreakable. The end.